What's going on, guys? Happy Thursday. Hope you're having a good one. We have the last balance patch for the month of January, and in my opinion, Marvel Snap's at a pretty good place balance-wise, but this patch will aim to revive a completely dead card, help tame the Destroy archetype a little bit. We'll get to that, and 3 buffs directed at underplayed cards that desperately need the love. Now, as always, guys, let's waste none of your time. Get right to the biggest buff that's going to definitely affect your Marvel Snap gameplay. And we start with Luke Cage, who before today was a 2-cost, 3-power card. They took away his AoE of power reduction or prevention of power reduction to your cards to just 1 location because they thought it was too big of an ability for a 2-cost card. They thought people would still play him, and they really didn't. Maybe like Cerebro, but that was about it. In fact, he had a 2.1% play rate, which is pretty damn low, and 49% win rate, which isn't too bad in comparison to the other cards we'll talk about today. But they fixed it, guys. They fixed it by taking him up to a 3-cost card, but they resurrected him by giving him back the ability to prevent power reduction across all of your cards, which for just 1 more cost is definitely a huge win. Now, obviously, because we already had this style of Luke Cage before, we know just how good this is, and even though it does come at a little bit of a higher cost, this is still very good. In fact, he's getting more power, and we all know that the power that he helps kind of net gain is much more than just the 4 power that he's assigned with. Typically, when you're putting him in your decks, he's going to give you much more than a 3-4 stat line. So I definitely expect him to kind of go back into the meta game. He helps balance against high Evo shells, right? All those toxic decks that are starting to creep up a lot more. And you should just expect him in more gameplay, much more than 2.1% moving forward. Definitely happy with the change. I like the AoE effects. Kind of hoping we get the same thing for Elsa, but you increase her cost as well. That's how I would go about it instead of just killing it to 1 lane. We saw what that had as an impact, and really people abandoned that style of play. Now, for our next 2 buffs, they aim to help the move archetype even further. We've had buffs to other move cards in Hercules. And finally, guys, Heimdall is catching up with the rest of the pack, going from a 6'8" to a 6'9". Now, Heimdall, his stats aren't really good, and that's probably because people just don't think about it when they play him, and he has definitely below a 50% win rate by a far margin. His play rate's only 2.5%, which is kind of crazy because he's like the key to move, which I think just kind of sums up the archetype altogether. I thought they should have done this back when they nerfed Shang-Chi, making it 10 power and above, but this combined with our next buff should definitely spice up move, and this is on top of all the other changes that we've had to the archetype. Spiderman 2099, the laughingstock of not only just the move archetype, but really Marvel Snap, is going from a 4'6" up to a 5'9". Guys, nobody was playing this card. In fact, he has a 0.4% popularity in his play rate. That's really bad. Some of the lowest that I've ever seen. Even dedicated move fans didn't like or utilize Spider-Man 2099. Now, he does lose some of his synergy with Zabu. Not a lot of people were playing that. And you can't do some of the combos that maybe you could on turn 5. But you still can use Ghost Spider and Iron Fist to play him on turn 6. Or what a lot of people should do, and just play him on curve and then play Heimdall on turn 6. Yes, the cost doesn't equate, but essentially, if you move him, and he kills even something as bad as a Nightcrawler, right? Like, worst case scenario, what is he, a 5'11" in stats? So not terrible anymore stat-wise. I see him really working for Heimdall. I think the move archetype needs like a Morbius for move, right? Like, depending on how many cards you move that game, you have a card that kind of stacks up, like a Knoll, if you will, to really make it competitive. But we keep getting OTAs more and more and more. Something I'm really passionate on the Snapchat about. I think a whole OTA should be dedicated to move, and this is kind of a step in that direction. Definitely an archetype that we have to get our hands on more and more, and will always be somewhat difficult to play. But it's nice to see that one of the worst cards in Snap get a nice buff. All right, next up is another card that nobody played, and that's going to be Ghost. Now, this is the version before today. This is a 1-cost, 2-power card. Ongoing, your cards always reveal last. You never saw this card. 0.5% play. I mean, virtually just above Spider-Man 2099. And that's for a couple of reasons. Outside of like Valkyrie, maybe Zoo, and then, you know, potentially every now and then in these Spectrum decks, that ability is not that great with Alioth out there in the wild. Well, they agree that it's somewhat of a negative ability in today's meta, so they addressed it by giving Ghost 3 cost with 5 power, a premium stat line, which will definitely increase her play rate. Now, I'm excited about this. I don't play a lot of Ghosts, but 3-5 is something I can't ignore. So definitely, I can see Ghosts fitting into more and more unique deck builds. The problem is you can kind of just counter this all together with Goliath if Ghost got too popular. So there's a little bit of that, right? If your cards are always revealing last, you can kill the cards that your opponent plays, on the last turn. But with Valkyrie and with some of these other cards, maybe it does have some more use. Now, you can't play Valkyrie on the lane Ghost is on anymore, or at least you probably don't want to, because instead of increasing stats, you go down in stats. So there are drawbacks, but having another powerful ongoing card for Spectrum is nice. We have a lot of cheap one cost already, so I don't mind it being a 3-5, but I'm definitely interested. I think this will be fun. There's a lot of decks that you want to go second, right? Shang-Chi, Enchantress, these tech decks. I actually really like her in Sarah Control because that is a deck all about defense, and I think that kind of just fits right into the package. So we'll have to test and see how it all goes, but I'm excited for Ghost. Now, lastly, guys, let's talk about Destroy. Now, they've identified that Destroy is a little bit too good, and everybody plays it. It's almost always the top deck of the season in popularity because, let's face it, it's got badass characters. The playstyle is cool. It's pretty simplistic, and just a lot of great cards and combos within the archetype. Well, I was afraid of what they might adjust. Is Venom going to go back down? Carnage, maybe Deadpool, because this guy can get way over the top if you start killing him with Nico and all that great stuff. Heck, I thought Nico was going to maybe get the nerf with her Destroy ability. No, guys. Hulkbuster, of all cards, and it makes sense. The best builds are with Hulkbuster, is going from a 3-5 down to a 2-3. I actually think this is kind of, maybe not a buff, but it's definitely not a nerf in my eyes because, well, let's face it, Deadpool on 1, Hulkbuster on 2, and then your Deadpool has 4 power. You can get it to 8 on turn 3. Definitely sounds great to me. Yes, if you had a bad hand, sometimes Hulkbuster could really help you catch up, but that won't be the case as much anymore, and Deadpool's power goes down by like just a little bit. But guys, Human Torch, Multiple Man, the cards that really wanted to utilize Hulkbuster, they all are going to feel a lot better. And you can play him later because at 3 cost, it felt a little awkward at times. So I think ultimately this is definitely going to be a nice, neutral change overall. They kind of framed it that they wanted it to be a nerf for Destroy, but time will tell. I ultimately think this is going to be a pretty nice change for everything involved, both Move, Destroy, and just Hulkbuster as a card. And that's going to be it, guys. Short and sweet. We'll see if Move becomes somewhat competitive. Again, I'll be testing all this live on Twitch right after this. I expected this to be a short patch, and then the big patch is coming next week in our kind of monthly balance patch. We'll see if this does the trick. The meta is pretty healthy at the moment, so I'm glad there's nothing earth-shattering in here, but it'll be fun to see where it goes. Now, if you haven't already, about 55% of you guys have not subscribed that watch every day. One click for you, but it helps me out massively. If my videos do help you out, it would mean a ton. Have a good one. Have a great one. Till the next one, guys. Happy snapping.